In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about language learning. I'm going to answer all of your questions. Every week, I get dozens, these days even hundreds of questions in the comments between YouTube, Twitter, my own community, the course, Telegram group, everywhere I get hundreds of questions. And I'm going to try to answer them all in one video so that I don't have to spend hours and hours and hours answering to all of you individually. Because even if I love to do that, it's very time consuming. All right. So let's stop wasting time and let's get straight to the point. I'm going to give you the answers to as many of the questions as possible. So, first question. What is your opinion on TED Talks as native speaker content? They always got a very decent transcript. And this guy is talking about TED Talks as content for input, obviously, for listening or watching. And my opinion, and he's asking for my opinion is that I don't really like them. Not because they're bad for language learning, simply I don't enjoy the content. TED Talks have, obviously it depends on the subject and it depends on who's speaking, right? But they all tend to have the same format and the same cadence. When I was a child, I was told that I couldn't do this and this, but then I discovered blah, blah, blah. Now I'm going to talk to you about it for 17 minutes. They always have the same, same speech patterns, same format of some short personal story or some question in the beginning and I really don't enjoy listening to that. Now, if you enjoy listening to that, yeah, it's decent content for language learning. Again, only if you know the most common verbs, nouns, and adjectives, if you know enough vocabulary. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult. If you want to learn a language, or if you want to get more listening practice by listening to TED Talks, I highly recommend learning all the common words, all the most common words first, with mnemonics and example sentences and lots of reviewing, and then get the transcript of the TED Talk and get the vocabulary list of the transcript with something like browser link and review the vocab list before you watch or listen to the talk so that you know the words. Because otherwise, and I get a lot of questions, there's going to be more questions about this later on. I get a lot of questions about this vocabulary with content. You should always review the vocab before you watch or listen to the content, because otherwise you're going to be stopping and looking up words and then stopping again 5 minutes later or 30 seconds later. And it really makes it slow and inefficient as well, but also much less enjoyable. But if instead you've reviewed the vocab list beforehand, it's going to be much easier to understand. You will not have to pause it and look up words, and it's going to be much more enjoyable and also more effective because, again, not only the learning is more effective because you understand more, it's also the fact that you'll be able to do it longer because it's more enjoyable, all right? So review the vocab first. And this is, by the way, if I remember correctly, Paul Nation also always says that you should first review the vocab. I was already doing this, but then I think once I read his book and watched a couple of interviews and presentations by him, he always talks about getting exposed to the vocab, reviewing the vocab before watching or listening to the content or reading the content, right? So vocab first. But yeah, TED Talks, if you're into it, they're fine. All right, next question. Hello, I'm taking the course too. It's awesome. Glad you like it. If anyone knows of any interesting podcasts in Russian about history, psychology, or personal development, I would like to know. There are lots of podcasts in Russian about history. Russians love history. I can, on the top of my mind, I can give you some names. Klim Zhukov on YouTube's pretty entertaining. Anything with Alexei Isayev in it about World War II. What's the other guy? Stefanov, I think. Alexander Stefanov, I think he's called. Цифровая история is also good. There's lots of stuff. I think psychology and personal development, I can't really give you anything, but I think what I'll do is write down a list, a compilation of podcasts in every language by topic, so that you guys, whatever language you're trying to learn, you have a list of resources to listen to, interesting stuff to listen to. And if you're interested in one specific topic and that's not included, there's nothing about that, I can very quickly find stuff for that as well. But this is not something you, like, unless it's a language that's unless it's a language that's spoken only by very few people, like my native Basque. For languages like Spanish or Portuguese or Arabic or Russian with millions and millions of hundreds of millions of speakers, it should be very easy to find interesting podcasts about any topic. You just have to go to Spotify or to YouTube or Apple Podcasts or whatever the thing's called, and you just type the words that you like. If you're into psychology, then you type psychology in that specific language and you'll get podcasts. And if you're into sports, then you'll get podcasts about sports. Just search. You can also use ChatGPT or similar AI to look for, just get a list of podcasts about a specific topic in a specific language from there. All right. Next question. Do you mean the 150 sentences when you say listen to the first audio file while reading the text? Or do you mean listen to the audio of the 2000 verb sentences for day 1 of the 30-day challenge? Thanks. Both. You need to listen to the 150 conversation sentences many times, and you have to listen to the 2000 example sentences for the 2000 verbs. Maybe not the whole list the first day already, but as many times as possible as well. For the 2000 verbs, what I recommend you do is first memorize them with mnemonics, 30 of them a day, 50 a day, 100 a day, whatever, as many of them as you can. And then you read while listening, like the list of example sentences, you read it while listening. And then you also keep listening to it over and over and over, and then you shadow it as well. And you're going to need a lot of repetition, but 2000 example sentences is around 2 hours of audio. So you can, in 20 or 30 hours, you can learn that pretty easily. And with that, you'll understand 90-something% of the language, because 2000 verbs, pretty much all the verbs in the language. And there's also a lot of other vocab in those sentences. It's included in those example sentences. So just that list will be enough to help you understand a lot of the vocab. Then obviously there's the pronunciation issue, and you need to get used to native speakers, like the way they speak and all of that, which is different from how the AI voices sound, but it's a really good way to learn all the basic vocabulary fast. So yeah, the example sentences for the most common verbs and the adjectives and the nouns, you need to listen to them and read them while listening and shadow them as many times as possible. At least 10, 15, 20 times, the whole list. All right, until you understand everything easily. And then native speaker content will be much easier. Of course, the 150 sentences for conversation, it'll be much easier to do because it's less than 10 minutes of audio. So you can listen to that 20 times in just a day. Like just play it over and over again and listen to it while reading the first few times. And then after that, you simply keep listening to it while you do something else, like working out or go to the beach or something like that. Next question. I just saw your 10,000 word video on word families. I hope that is our next task in this 30-day challenge. Starting to get fun. It's not included in the 30-day challenge, and I'm going to explain why. The 30-day challenge is supposed to take you from whatever your level is currently, either you're starting from scratch or you are a beginner or maybe even intermediate, but it's designed to improve both your comprehension and your speaking skills. And learning 10,000 words in a month, it's a lot of hard work. It's doable, definitely doable. Don't let people tell you that you can't do it. You can definitely do it. But that's mostly for, well, it's just for expanding your vocab, right? And that's mostly for comprehension. It's going to help your speaking as well to some degree, but it's not the best exercise to improve your speaking skills. And the 30-day challenge needs to be balanced. It needs to have exercises to improve both your speaking and your comprehension. So if we were to focus only on mostly on the 10,000 word list, which is very doable, like learning them in a month, because they're organized in similar words, groups of similar words, and you use mnemonics, you memorize one of the words from the group, and then the rest of them, you review them over and over again in groups of similar words with example sentences, word families, and you can very quickly review tens of thousands of sentences. So it's doable, but I also wanted to work really hard on your speaking skills with lots of language islands that you have to write, translate, create audio files, then you shadow them, you translate, like you practice saying them aloud. All of that is very time and effort intensive, and if you want to improve your speaking skills, you need to work on that as well. So the 10,000 words with word families are not included in the 30-day challenge, because it just, like, I always tell you to work hard and to try to learn as fast as possible, but there's so much you can do, right? And if you also want to improve your speaking, learning 10,000 words, maybe you could do it at the same time. In fact, you can try if you want to. Like, you can go online and check. Well, you can just get the list and try to learn it if you want, but it's not included in the 30-day challenge. All right, next question. Peter says, day 2 of asking for Thai before I go to the motherland. What's the motherland? I will add Thai to the 30-day challenge eventually. Hopefully this week. I'm adding a new batch of languages every week. But yeah, not yet. I will include it though. There's so much content to create, to generate, and then upload. It's taking time because it's massive amounts of audio files, especially. It's quite heavy, and then yeah, the website is struggling to take all of it. But Thai is coming. Thai and a bunch of other languages from that area: Vietnamese, Indonesian, a bunch of languages from India. Hindi is included already, but a bunch of other languages are coming as well. People keep asking about those. They are coming, but have some patience. Next question. Hey, Michael, I hope you are doing well and thanks for all the content. Will there be Ukrainian anytime soon? Ukrainian has been included already in the 30-day challenge. In fact, I am in touch with quite a few people in Ukraine, expats in Ukraine, who are there for different reasons, who are learning Ukrainian. I'm helping them with this. So yeah, there's content for Ukrainian. Everything's been included already in the 30-day challenge. So you just join for free and you can start learning Ukrainian. All right. Will says, so much for the information on YouTube is put up by those people who are most focused on entertainment and drama than providing any semblance of meaningful information. I came across your videos and I immediately knew you were exactly the person that would help me cut through all the other BS and noise as it pertains for learning languages. Just wanted to send a sincere thank you. Keep up the phenomenal work. Yeah, thanks. I've been told before that I should include more entertainment in my videos, and I can be a funny guy if I want to. But the thing is, the kind of stuff that I've been told to do, okay, you should edit your videos and there should be a lot more like B-roll and this and that and make it more entertaining and more effects. And the thing is, I guess I am a YouTuber these days, but I never thought of myself as a YouTuber. I'm a language guy. I enjoy learning languages and helping people learn languages. And I'm a very straight to the point guy. I'm not an entertainer. I'm not I'm not someone who, and I'm really not into drama and all of that. So yeah, there's zero chance that I get more and more into entertainment and making, what's that buffoon that makes all those clownish videos about language learning? I don't remember. yeah, you won't see me do any of that anytime soon because this is about learning and I want to give you as much useful information as possible. So yeah, glad you like my videos. Keep following the advice, keep learning, stay consistent, and you will get results. Thanks for the comment. All right, next. Waiting for Hindi. Thank you so much. Hindi has been already added. I already added Hindi. Not all of the text is already. Not all of the text is Romanized. Some of it needs to be Romanized, and I always recommend Romanizing it before you learn, because if you try to learn with what's it called, Devanagari? Is it called? Let me check. Yeah, Devanagari. If you can already read that, great. If you can't read that, don't learn with that script, because it's going to really slow you down if you do that. I highly recommend you learn phonetically, so use the Roman alphabet. Just Romanize it with AI. I'm doing it myself, but it's taking some time to do. But just learn by reading the Romanized text, listening, repeating, do all the exercises like the shadowing and all of that, but learn everything phonetically, because otherwise, and the same applies to, I don't know, Arabic, Chinese. If you can't read the script, don't learn to read it until you can understand and speak the language. Otherwise, it's really going to slow you down. Unless you really want to learn it for academic purposes, or you want it for, like, you want to be able to read books. It's for, like, you are really interested in the culture, things like that. Okay, but if you want it for conversation and to be able to understand shows and things like that, focus on listening and speaking first. And the script, especially for things like kanji, leave it for later, because it's going to massively slow you down, right? Nobody learned to read and write before we learned to understand spoken language and to speak a native language, all right? All right. Next question. David says, hi, Michael, question for you. I noticed the audio files read pretty fast, and honestly, I struggle to keep up. Yeah, that happens to a lot of people. Do you think there's value in taking a smaller chunk, like 500 sentences, slowing the audio down a bit and focusing on those first? Or do you push yourself to get through the whole 2,000 sentences each day, even if there's limited comprehension retention? I suppose it's quality versus quantity question, and which you found to be more effective. I mean, I'm a musician, so these things are very interesting to me. Thanks. You're right that the audio files are pretty fast. That's the way it works. I can't really tell TTS Maker to make the audio files slower. To my knowledge, maybe I just need to try, right? Maybe I'm not an expert using that kind of software, so maybe there's some way to make it slower. But the advantage of going fast has several advantages. One of them being that you get to review more content in the same amount of time. I often listen to stuff that I'm reading and listening, not for shadowing because it's weird, and way too difficult, but for reading while listening. After the first time I do it, so I'm reading and listening the text at the same time, and I do it with the whole text, and I go back to the beginning the next day, and I listen to it at 1.25 speed while reading, and then the next day maybe at 1.5 speed, and I've tried double speed as well. Maybe it's a little bit too much and it sounds weird, but 1.25, 1.5, I do it regularly as well, just to make it faster and to be able to review more sentences in the same amount of time. If it's very difficult to do it this way, like you said, focus on a chunk first. Take 5 minutes of audio, 10 minutes of audio, and review that over and over until you can easily understand it, even if it's fast. Because I mentioned two advantages, right? The second advantage is that you're not only going fast and you're reviewing more content in the same amount of time, you're also training yourself to process the language fast. Because in the real world, one of the problems for listening comprehension and also for conversation is that you feel like the native speakers speak really quickly. People tell me that about Spanish all the time. And it's true that Spaniards often talk loud, very loudly, they're loud, and also very fast. But people say that all the time about most languages that they're learning, and it's because it's not that native speakers are speaking faster than other languages. It's that you're still. This is a problem when you mostly listen to beginner content. Hello guys, today we're going to talk about verbs again in Spanish. If you get used to that kind of speech, native speakers definitely are going to feel very fast. So if you train your comprehension with fast speech, it's going to be difficult in the beginning. But if you keep doing it daily for a few weeks, it'll be easy to understand. And if you listen to it at an even faster pace than what native speakers sound in real life, then understanding them will be way easier, because they'll feel like they're speaking much more slowly than what you have been training for, right? What you're used to. So that's another advantage of having fast content. Learning with training your listening skills by learning with fast content. You review more content in the same amount of time, and you get used to fast speech, and then native speakers feel slower. And that's for general comprehension, it's great, but also for conversation. It gives you more time. If you can't think fast in the language, it gives you much more time to process the language and to be able to respond. Because being able to understand what they said and then respond in time, something that makes sense, that's a problem that people often have. And we do all these speaking exercises for that. But being able to understand fast speech is also really helpful, because it just gives you some extra really valuable time when you have to respond, so that it's easier for you to respond, right? So speed's good. Train to get faster at both. Maybe not speak faster, but to be able to form sentences faster. Then you speak naturally, right? At a pace that's natural for you. You shouldn't try to sound like those people who speak unnaturally fast. No, but get used to understanding the language quickly. And again, I get this a lot from musicians. You should slow things down. You should get one sentence and really slow it down and focus on the tones and this and that. I think if you really want to work on your pronunciation, maybe this is a good idea. I think the mimic method guy, whatever his name is, does a lot of this, from what I've heard. Just take a few sentences and just review them over and over again and slow them down, like really slow them down and focus on the tone and all of that. And if you want perfect pronunciation, this is great. But in the beginning, what you need is the ability you need to learn as much vocab as possible, because otherwise you can't understand or speak. And also, excuse me, you need as much vocab as possible, and you also need to be able to think fast in the language in complete sentences. And it's much better to know 1,000 sentences that you can use, and you can just say them when necessary, even if it's not 100% correct and you mumble them and pronunciation's not great and there's some grammar mistakes, but you can say them and you can make yourself understood with 1,000 sentences, than knowing like 50 sentences really, really, really well, but then after that you can't say anything else. Then you can't really communicate, right? So more is better in the beginning. Like, learn as many words and sentences as possible with as many reps as possible. And for that, speed is important, because the faster you go, the more of them you can see. Next question. Pablito says, this is the only video anyone on YouTube will ever need to watch to figure out how to learn a language. Thank you. Yeah, thanks. In fact, I mean, I don't know if I've got one video that it's the only video you need to. Maybe there are about 1 or 2 videos I've got that I named because it works for the algorithm, right? But I've got like maybe 5 to 10 videos maximum that if you watch them and you really learn what I'm saying in them and you apply it, that's all you need. The basic concepts I explain, vocab, how to learn vocab, how to improve your speaking, all of that. And then the screen share tutorials where I show everything. If you watch those videos and you take notes and you start doing that and you do it consistently, again, 5 to 10 videos, and that's all you need. I don't know if there's one video, maybe one of those longer ones where I explain everything, but yeah, if you actually apply it, you don't need anything else. You don't need to spend thousands of hours watching another debate or another Polyglot has a podcast with linguist this guy and they talk again about how much input you need even though all of that is interesting. What's the French guy who invites all those academics, Lois something. I find his podcast really interesting and I listen to most of them, and most of them have written books, and when I listen to that, then I also get their books if they've got books, and I read the books as well. And all of that is interesting, but because this is what I'm into, right? And this is my field, and I'm always open to new ideas. But for the most part, if you listen to 30 of that guy's and I really like his channel, but if you listen to 30 of those conversations with different linguists, and this guy's into comprehensible input and this guy's into comprehensible input but also learning vocab, there's 2 or 3 different ideas you'll get, and they'll just keep repeating that. They'll be on one field, input is the only thing you need, or input is one thing but then you need more things, and they just be talking about the same things again and again. And if your goal is to learn a language as fast as possible, or you want to get results, and maybe not as fast as possible, but you want to get results in reasonable time, you should spend way more time just doing whatever in the language instead of watching endless YouTube videos on how to learn languages. Just learn vocab, get input, repeat sentences aloud, and then do recall and do the basics over and over, and you will improve. You don't need yet another video. In fact, you stop watching my videos and you the basic things I just said, you start applying them, you will get results. You don't need to watch all my videos, right? But if you watch all my videos, that's thank you. Anyway, next question. Buddy the buddy says, I'm so happy to have found this channel because in 1 year I will know 10,000 words in Russian, and even if I only know half that, I will still know 5,000 words. Yes, that's a really good point. So if I give you the blueprint to learn 10,000 words in a year, even if you do 50% of it and you learn 5,000, that's already way more than you would by doing something else that's way slower. But when I give you the blueprint, sorry, it's really hot here. It's almost summer. If I give you the blueprint to learn 10,000 words with 10,000 example sentences, with word families and all of that, those example sentences will contain a lot of other words that just happen to be there. So you will incidentally learn way more vocab that's just included there as part of the example sentences of those words, of that vocab list. So in fact, you'll probably, even if you learn the first 5,000 words and their example sentences of that 10,000 list, you will probably learn way more than 10,000 words in total, because you'll incidentally learn a lot more vocab from the example sentences, right? So, but yeah, even if you do, whenever I give you a plan, learn this many words, and some people complain, oh, that's impossible. No, it's not impossible because I do it and lots of other people do it, and I know they do it as well. First of all, it's not impossible, but also even if you do it at 50%, you're still getting much better results than most people in language learning, or that you would be getting if you weren't doing that, if you were doing Duolingo or something like that. So even if you just do 50% of it, you're still getting great results. So that's the attitude. Just start doing, right? Next, Joan says, would you suggest learning more than one language at a time? Yeah, if you want to learn more than one language at a time, and you've got actually good reasons to learn more than one language, I get messages by a lot of people who just, I want to be a polyglot. I want to be a YouTube polyglot. And how many languages do you speak? Well, my native language and English. And I want to learn like 6 languages in the next year. Don't do that. Do it if you want, but don't start learning a bunch of languages as fast as you can, all of them together, because you want to be a YouTube polyglot. This whole YouTube thing, I only got into that like relatively recently, after learning a bunch of languages for completely different reasons, like moving to this place to work there, learning, working with these people, having friends, sparring partners for this country, having a girlfriend from that other country. That's how I started learning, and I learn those languages more and more seriously. But if you start learning a bunch of languages because you want to be a YouTube polyglot, you will not, unless you're some freak of nature that's extremely motivated and you're some like, I don't know, David Goggins type, which you're probably not. You will not make it. But if you've got good reasons to learn those languages, I don't know, you want to move to whatever place and they speak 3 languages there, or you'd like to, whatever reason. But people have reasons to learn multiple languages. If you want to learn multiple languages, what I recommend you do is, yes, learn them simultaneously. Do not learn one for 3 months and then just shelve it and learn another one for 3 months. And don't do that, because then by the time you are in your 3rd quarter, you will not only be rusty, but you will probably have forgotten a lot of the first language because you're not using it, right? So what I recommend you do if you're learning 2, 3, 4 languages at the same time is focus heavily on one, maybe 2 weeks, a week, 2 weeks, a month on one, work really hard to learn the basics, and then put that one on maintenance mode. Just listen to your language islands, listen to podcasts, repeat things aloud, do like some speaking exercises, but do some basic maintenance on that, and then work really hard on a second language, and then move on to a 3rd language if you want to, but make sure that you are working at least on a maintenance level on the other languages, so you don't forget them. All right, that's what I would do. Maybe if you've got, and again, it depends on how much time you've got a day. If you've got half an hour a day and you want to learn 3 languages at the same time, it's going to be hard. But if you've got 2-3 hours a day, spend 2 hours learning one really hard, and then the rest of the 3rd hour reviewing the other 2 languages. And if you do it like this long term, it's doable. You can also keep it interesting by switching the main language that you're learning that week or that day, because it's going to be like, if you focus heavily on one at a time, but without forgetting the others, it will be less boring than just like doing the same thing over and over forever. Something I do often is just, for my main languages that I use often, if I'm not going to use them for a while, I just do some shadowing daily, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day of shadowing while I do something else, while I'm cooking my meals or something, or I'm sometimes even while working out. Not outside, because people will think I'm crazier than they already think I am. But if I'm doing a home workout or something, I'll have my language islands and I'll do 10-15 minutes of one, just listening and repeating while doing push-ups or something, then next language, and I'll have a checklist of languages, and I'll make sure to do some shadowing with each one of them, so I don't get rusty in either of them. But yeah, you can definitely learn more than one language at the same time, as long as you have enough time to stay consistent with all of them, and you plan your learning, right? Next question. You won't believe it, but Duolingo made me remember how to speak Hindi. I stopped speaking it for a long time, then did some Duolingo, and now most people don't even believe me when I say I forgot how to speak it about 2 months. So you speak Hindi and you didn't speak it for 2 months, and now turns out you can still speak it after 2 months of not speaking it, and you're giving Duolingo credit for that. You don't forget a language in a few months of... If you actually learn a language to a decent level and you can speak a language, you don't forget a language. You might get rusty if you don't use it at all, but the moment you start listening to it and you start having chances to speak it, if you actually try to speak it, it all comes back. Duolingo has nothing to do with it. Duolingo is a waste of time. Stop wasting your time with that nonsense. Next. I speak several languages and I think it's impossible to learn 30 new words per day. Maybe if you study for hours per day or you're in a foreign country. But even then, it's not going to work every day. Okay, first of all, it's always the people who... the people in the comments who are like, oh, that's what you're saying is impossible, you can't do that. And they always say, like, I've learned this many languages and you can't do that. And the answer to that is, so you did something, we don't know how well you did it and how long it took you, and you assume that no one can do it better and faster than you. That's like going to the gym for years, and then you look at the Olympics and you're like, no, it's impossible. You can't do that. I've been going to the gym. No one can lift that much or something. No. It's like, what makes you think you know what can and can't be done? Also, first sentence, it's impossible to do blah, blah, blah. And then, maybe if you do this, so is it impossible or is it not impossible? And let me tell you how you can learn 30 words a day. 30 words a day, if you know how to use mnemonic associations, 5 to 10 minutes, maybe even less if you're really good at mnemonic associations. And this doesn't mean that if you create 30 mnemonic associations, you'll remember every single word, but 30 words with example sentences are less than 2 minutes of audio. Now, how many times in a day can you listen to a 2-minute audio? How many times can you review those 30 sentences? And how many times can you then review not only that day, but the following day and the day after and so on? If you memorize 30 words with mnemonics, and even if even if you're not very good at mnemonics, if you then read and listen to them 20 times, to that 20 times, like 2 minutes, 20 times, it's not that much. Like, you can do that in a day, and then a couple times a day for the rest of the month. Will you forget those words? Next question. Do I keep access for course forever? I have tight schedule for a few weeks, but I will definitely do it later. Yeah, if you join, what day is it today? 12th of May. If you join before the end of the month, you keep access to the 30-day challenge for as long as you want to. It will go behind the paywall in June, at the end of this 30 days. But if you're already in, you get to use it for as long as you want, right? For as many languages as you want as well. Next question. Jeffrey says, I'm learning Mandarin living in China. but I'm more interested in speaking and listening than reading and writing. Should I learn Pinyin? And that's the Romanized version of instead of Chinese characters, you write Chinese with the Roman alphabet. And the answer is, of course. Like you say here, if you're more interested in speaking and listening than reading and writing, 100% should you completely skip Chinese characters, avoid it, unless it's for things like street signs or restaurant signs, menus, that kind of thing could be useful to know what those things mean. But if it's mostly for listening, comprehension, and speaking, it's a waste of time to try to learn the characters because they're very difficult and time-consuming to learn, and you're not going to speak better by learning them. Some nerds are going to tell you that yes, you should learn them first. Blah blah blah. Look, if you want to learn to understand and speak Chinese or Japanese or any of those, Korean's different because Korean's a phonetic language. It's an actual alphabet. It's not. The characters are much easier to learn and they actually make sense, right? But for Chinese, Romanize it. Learn the Romanized version. Use Pinyin. I don't know the exact pronunciation. Is it Pinyin? Whatever. Learn it with audio and Romanized characters, and learn to understand them and say them aloud. And once you can understand native speakers and you can speak relatively fluently, then if you are really interested, then you should maybe learn the writing system. But otherwise, it's really going to slow you down and it's not worth it. If you mostly want to speak, definitely skip it, right? Next question. Roque says, you speak Dutch? Respect, man. It's really difficult language. I know because it's my mother language. I do speak Dutch. It's not my strongest language, but I do speak it. But honestly, it's not that difficult if you already speak English and especially German. Because Dutch is very similar to both languages. It's like in between them. Pronunciation is harder, but vocabulary and grammar are very easy if you speak German and English. So if anyone's interested in learning Dutch, it's not such a hard language. It's the pronunciation. It's the R's are all over the place. Like sometimes it's a R, sometimes it's a R, sometimes it's a R. The G, it's like a Spanish, like the G's are like a Spanish G sound. Pronunciation is quite tricky, but again, not that hard. Dutch is relatively doable. I've been to Amsterdam recently. Bought a couple of books that I'm reading now about World War II in Dutch. Next question. Kyle says, I'm trying to find Paul Nation's word families. I can't seem to find a list that has 10,000 word families. Can you tell me where I can find it? There's this thing called BNC COCA, COCA. It's Paul Nation's list, and it's available PDF on a spreadsheet or something. BNC COCA list, and it's in English. And then you get the main word and then all the related words, and you get the 1,000 main words with all the related words, so 1,000 word families, and then the next 1,000 word families, and with all the, you get the idea, and you get, I don't know, 10, 15,000 word families there. After like 5,000, it gets weirder and weirder because they're much less common words. And after 10,000, it's just not worth learning, I think, in my opinion. But yeah, you get that BNCCOC. Let me check. BNCCOCA. I don't know what it stands for, but yeah, you can find it easily online. Paul Nation, BNC, COCA. What I did is take those words and use AI. You can do it too. I took those words, word families, took all those words and created an example sentence for each one of the words. So you get a word with its own family. And for each one of the words in the family, I create an example sentence. So you get 10, 15, 20 sentences from the same family, all the words. So clarity, clear, unclear, clarify, blah, blah, blah. That's the word family. And an example sentence for each one of them. And then I just translate it to different languages. It doesn't 100% accurately translate sometimes, but it gets the job done really well. You learn the first 1,000 families. That's around 7,000 or 8,000 words in total. Then the next, which with both of them you already know, around 15,000 words in total, and so on and so forth. Very effective if you want to understand actually interesting content. Skylar says, how can you do 30 words a day every day, including reviewing words, so you don't forget in just 45 minutes, along with immersion? 30 words a day, very simple. You have the list, you take 30 words, and you create mnemonic associations for them. And if you're decent at it, you can do that in less than 10 minutes. 5 minutes, if you could. And then you take the example sentences, and the example sentences for 30 words are less than 2 minutes of audio, and you can read and listen to that list of sentences 5 times in 10 minutes. And if you don't remember them well after that, you keep listening to them daily, several times a day, every single day. Those 30 words, those 30 sentences for those 30 words, plus the next ones and the next ones, it's really not that much. Like if you can review 1,000 sentences per hour, probably more than that, you can easily review them while you're working out or something. And you will not perfectly remember them the next day maybe, but after listening to the whole list daily for a week or two, you'll remember all of them. So again, mnemonic associations, and then example sentences with audio and lots of listening. Next question. Okay, this guy's talking about Duolingo. If you want an explanation, they basically fired all the workers to replace them with robots simply so they could have more money and less work. They also said that they always were using AI to begin with, which means that Duolingo is pretty much making you think you are learning, but you're not. You're just writing and saying random words that are not even accurate to the language you want to learn, especially Japanese. Yeah, that's the part about it's pretty much making you think you are learning when you're not. Like, couldn't have said it better myself. Duolingo, that's what Duolingo is. It's making you feel like you're doing something while you're really not. It's the goal is to give you a dopamine hit, keep you hooked, keep you make you keep using the app without really accomplishing anything. And yeah, you learn some vocab with it, but again, people with the 2,000 day streaks and whatever still can speak. It's a waste of time. Next question, and this is a really long one. How do we determine whether a word is truly useless? LOL. Most people default to reviewing only the most common words they already know, assuming advanced vocabulary is a waste of time. Because rarer words don't show up often, so they seem impractical. If the goal is merely to impress others, they'll be better off studying like an academic. But then reality hits. They don't have time to chase careers in academia, linguistics, blah, blah, blah. So they shrug and say, well, I'm just learning this language for fun. The sad truth is, deep down, many feel the words they already know aren't enough. It's not curiosity driving them, it's ego whispering. You must master every word and use them daily. Not out of interest, but to impress. They chase the illusion of eloquence not for meaning, but for validation. And yet they circle back, realizing they just learn a language for fun, not just for academia, diplomacy, or espionage. A humble pastime hijacked by vanity. That was way more profound than the comments I normally get. The reality is, there is value in learning a lot of words and knowing a lot of words. You should definitely, if you want to be fluent in a language, you should have a lot of vocab that you know. But there are two types of vocab. There's active vocab and there's passive vocab. Passive vocab is much bigger than your active vocab, even in your native language, because it's composed of words that you can recognize, you understand them, but you don't use them actively. You don't use them when speaking. Unless you are, I don't know, Russell Brand or one of those people who like to use fancy words all the time to try to sound smart. But most of us, almost everyone, we've got a lot of words that we understand but we don't use. So you need two types of vocab. Your active vocab should be all the useful stuff, your language islands, the everyday stuff, the words you'll use for the conversation topics that you normally have. Those you should know really well, and you should remember them with no hesitation. But then you should also have a lot of other vocab that you don't really use actively, but you still understand. If you want to be able to understand books and shows and things like that in the language, you need all that vocab as well. So you should learn that as well. But it's less. That vocab is less urgent because you don't need it for immediate use in conversation. So it's a secondary thing. If you really want to learn about the culture and you want to read lots of books in the language and stuff, yes, you should eventually learn that vocab. I recommend simply getting vocab lists of the content you're interested in. Go over the vocab and you review the vocab and you learn all that vocab eventually. Just review the list, memorize them with associations, and then read the content, listen to the content, etc. And eventually you'll understand that interesting content because you know all the vocab there. But otherwise, just learning fancy words for the sake of it, like you say, no, you can do it if you want to, but it's really, I don't think it's a good use of your time, in my opinion. Why do all your thumbnails look like the Hitman character? That's my other nighttime job that I don't talk about in my videos. Next question. I like your tips and follow some already. If you are saying by targeted learning, learn the words in a certain area, I 1000% agree. Man's belief true. If random words, not so much. If I read several stories in one area, the main vocabulary repeated all the time, and researching and memorizing related type words, and I'm likely to encounter helps a lot for sure, but not sure how many are retained. If I were interested in gardening, and I'm not, I'd expect to learn words for tools, plants, vegetables, verbs like planting, digging, hoeing, watering, etc. But still, there would be many unexpected words that I would expect to flag and study. But what do you think of looking at the yellow and blue words in LingQ? That's Steve Kaufmann's thing, before reading. Those would be targeted at what you are planning to read. If that is what you're suggesting, I could not agree more, and I will try. The blue and yellow words in LingQ, can you get a list beforehand? Before you read the specific piece of content, can you get a vocab list of the words you don't know there? The unknown words? Because if you can, then it's great. Otherwise, you still have to go through the text first, which is slow. My advice is to get a vocab list of whatever you're interested in. Like once you learn the basics, and like I said, I always say this, start with the verbs. Learn the verbs, because the most, not just the most common verbs. Learn the 2000 verb list. You don't need to know exactly like every single word there, but learn most of it, because verbs are going to help you understand much more, whatever the topic. Nouns change a lot more, depending on the subject, right? They are much more topic specific, but verbs are useful in lots of different topics. A lot of, not all verbs, like planting, digging, hoeing, but a lot of verbs are very flexible. They're very useful in many different contexts. So learn those first, and then adjectives as well. Learn as much vocab as possible from the common verbs, adjectives, and later on nouns as well. Those lists. But then after that, get the vocab list of whatever content you're interested in. Transcripts of videos and podcasts. They directly take the vocab list of books, articles, whatever you're going to read. Get a list with a vocabulary frequency calculator. Review the vocab list first before you read it, and create mnemonics for the words that you didn't know. And then read or listen to or watch the piece of content. And it's going to be much easier to remember those words if you've reviewed the vocab list before, and you're going to understand much more easily as well. So the content will be more enjoyable and easier to understand, and also you learn vocab much more efficiently doing that. Next, are you using Google Translate for these lists? If I Google Translate to Spanish, will I benefit or be at a disadvantage? No, it's perfectly fine to use translation for language learning. In fact, translation is a really good tool for language learning in many different ways. Bilingual texts are great. Having a direct translation of everything you're trying to learn next to it is something I do all the time with language islands and everything, because it's much more efficient. You just look at it, okay, that's what it means, instead of trying to guess and things. And also translating into the language and then getting the answer. That's also effective for fluency and error correction. So yeah, translation in general, it's a great tool. All right. Next. These tips are all good things to do. That said, the time frame is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Capital letters. First, it is doubtful anyone could learn 30 words in 45 minutes unless... Here we go again. It's impossible that anyone can do that because I think it's impossible. Okay. Well, people do it all the time. Unless many were related through conjugation or something. Do dog and dogs count as two words? You could argue. There's no point in arguing that kind of stuff. If so, learning English, you could make it 15 and plural, and in languages like Russian, you could do cases and plurals. But that would not only get you very far, 30 distinct words, no way. Says who? Look. So, huge rant on why learning 30 words a day is impossible. All reviewed in 45 minutes per day, well enough to be retained, not happening, not possible. Please describe your review process. It would need to become longer and longer every day. Are you using some kind of SRS scheme? I'm really asking, as I've tried many strategies and they grow out of control. Like I said, 13 mnemonic associations per day, doable in 5 to 10 minutes. If you're decent at it, less than 5 minutes if you're really good at it. You can review 30 sentences with you can review 30 words with example sentences and audio in less than 10 minutes. You read while listening, start to finish, less than 2 minutes of audio to review 30 sentences. And then you can listen to it while reading several more times, and you can listen to it during the day while you work out, while you drive, whatever, over and over again. And the following days, you can keep listening to it. And finally, he has a good point here. Are you using some kind of SRS scheme? I'm really asking, as I've tried many strategies and they grow out of control. This is why I don't really use Anki, because even if it's pretty good, it's not bad. Anki is much better than using Duolingo or that kind of stuff. But the problem with Anki flashcards is that exactly what he's pointing out here, that after a few days, after a few weeks of learning more words, and then you get the old ones to review, you have a massive list to review every day, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And it takes time. But if you have audio files with example sentences of those words, like I said, 30 example sentences, 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. 1,000 example sentences, usually less than, depends on the language, but usually less than an hour. You can listen to that daily, and as long as you memorize them well and you also read them while listening, so you know what it looks like, the sentence and all that, you can listen to that list over and over again easily. Just have it in the background, and you get dozens of reps of listening to those example sentences, and you learn them by heart easily. So one more time, 30 mnemonic associations, 5 to 10 minutes. Listen to those sentences while reading a few times. Very fast. You can do that very, very fast. Like, you can listen to all 30 sentences 5 times from start to finish in 10 minutes or less. And then you just keep listening you put them in a playlist and you keep listening to them over and over and over again. Just make a playlist and listen to them in the background. Instead of listening to podcasts or some random stuff, listen to the example sentences of the words you want to learn on repeat until you grow sick and tired of them, but you know them by heart. And then you can move on to interesting content once you know several thousand words. It's doable, right? Next, would this work for Spanish, and is it really 7 days, and how many hours a day? Well, if you're going to learn 2,000 verbs in 7 days, it's going to have to be several hours a day. This works, it's really fast, but we don't do miracles here, right? So it's going to be hard work, several hours a day, but you can definitely learn 2,000 Spanish verbs in 7 days. Like I said, mnemonic associations, lots of reviewing by reading and listening and shadowing the sentences, the example sentences of the words, of the verbs in this case. And that's it. It works. You just have to put in the work. For 2,000 verbs in 7 days, you will need like 50, 100, maybe 100 mnemonic associations per day. I know 2,000 divided by 7 it's more than that per day, but a lot of the verbs in Spanish are recognizable enough for an English speaker because they look similar. So you don't need to create mnemonic associations for those, only for the ones that look very different. And then 2,000 sentences are less than 2 hours of audio. So you can listen to those during the day again and again and again while you commute, drive, work out, do whatever. And if with like 20 or 30 hours of listening, as long as you've also been reading the list, you will remember most of them well. And even if you learn just half of the list in 7 days and the other half you don't remember all that well, it's still a huge win, isn't it? You still understand way more and you're able to speak way more than you were a week ago. So it's worth trying. Next comment, and this one's interesting. I learn 300 words a day with zone mode flow state, the condition where you use 100% of your focus. This is really interesting because it's something that is not talked about a lot when it comes to language learning, but it's really important. Time on task is really important, how much time you spend in contact with the language. Of course, the more time you spend in contact with the language, the better. But the quality of that time is also really important. And if you can get to a state where you're really, really 100% focused to doing deep work, that time is much more valuable. Yeah? So those people counting I'm doing 600 hours of comprehensible input in Spanish this year, blah, blah, blah. quality of the time is really important. It's not only about how many hours. What you do and how focused you are. Like how actively you learn, how effective the exercises are, and how focused you are. If you're 100% focused in a flow state, and I've got ADHD, I'm not great at that. I often just get distracted. But if you can do effective learning like that, and when I manage, this is why I spend a lot of time learning, because often I just do more reps. I just go through the motions, even if it's not quality learning, because I need to do learning. But when I manage to get to a flow state, when I'm really fully focused, I improve a lot in 10-15 minutes. I learn more in 10-15 minutes than in hours of just casual exposure to the language. I don't do it very often because that's not what I do most of the time, right? I can get to that state sometimes, or maybe more than once a day sometimes, but it's not something, maybe less than that if I'm also really busy with work. But so most of the learning is not that. It's not this time where I'm doing deep work, super focused, flow state, all of that. But once I'm there, that time is the best time. That's the most efficient learning time. I improve a lot in 15-20 minutes of that. I improve way more than with hours and hours of just really casual input. But you have to get there. So this is important, and it's something that they don't talk about a lot. Most people don't talk about this. Flow state, get in the zone and be really, really focused. The quality of the time you spend learning. If you go watch Andrew Huberman and Carl Newport, there's a really interesting podcast with both of them in Huberman's podcast. Go read Carl Newport's books as well, by the way. They're really good. But deep work and being really focused and working, doing the most difficult exercises, the highest impact exercises while being really focused is it's much more efficient when it comes to time. You improve way more in much less time than just getting exposed to the language. Just being exposed to the language casually, passively listening is good because it's low effort and you can get more reviewing by that. But the actual, the big breakthroughs will happen while you're doing the really focused work. There was a really interesting comment because most people don't talk about this in language learning. Next question. Frank says, my routine is 300 reps per day for 5 days. So what? 300 reps per day for 5 days. So 1,500 reps of one sentence in best. 1,500 reps of one sentence in total. Best are short sentences about 4 words length. Maybe parts of sentences or expressions. What I also notice is that later when I hear a word from those sentences, I understand them without translation, like in my native language. And the most important thing is that repetition should be done aloud. Fully agree with that one. You can alternate speed of reps. For example, extremely slow at the beginning, later very fast. I apply it to sentences which I use the most frequently, or some sentences from each area of grammar, so later I don't need to hesitate during conversation. Obviously, it cannot be used to learn all the existing words in a language as it is time-consuming. Time-consuming! 300 reps takes about 10-15 minutes. So you do 1,500 reps of one sentence. Mate, I admire your work ethic, but that's overkill. That's way too much. And it's counterproductive because, well, there's diminishing returns to everything, right? And if you're doing 1,500 reps for 5 days, you're spending 5 days learning one sentence in 5 days, that's 6 sentences a month. You need to learn way more sentences to be able to understand and speak a language. For me, I mean, depends on the person and your goals and what your priorities are and all of that. But 20, 30 reps of shadowing, like repeating the same sentence aloud per sentence, like 20 to 30 reps, more than enough to learn that sentence well. Not 1,500. If you do 20 or 30 reps with each sentence, you can, instead of 6 sentences per month, you can learn hundreds of sentences per month. And you don't need to learn each sentence perfectly. And even if you want to learn them perfectly, how much better are you going to be at repeating a sentence aloud after like 100 reps of the same sentence or 1,000 reps of the same sentence? Is it worth the extra 900 reps of just that sentence? After 100 reps of the same sentence, you already know it really well. So in the same amount of time, you could learn 10 or 20 times the amount of sentences. And knowing more words and sentences is also really important in language learning. So again, like knowing 1,000 sentences, more or less, that you can say them with some mistakes and all right pronunciation, 1,000 sentences is much more useful than knowing 10 sentences 100% perfectly like a native speaker. Because the moment you have to say something else, you're not able to say it. Again, I really admire the work ethic, but it's overkill. 300 reps for 5 days with one sentence. Like do 10 reps with 30. Take 30 sentences instead. Or take 100 sentences and do 10 reps each for 5 days, and you'll improve way faster. Unless you already speak the language well, and for some reason you want to get, even then, if you want to get like native level pronunciation, I wouldn't do this. But yeah, if you work in that much, maybe it's just trolling. It just sounds way too crazy. But I don't know. There are people doing some really crazy stuff. This is some Goggins level thing. I don't know. Anyway, next question. I would like to ask your idea about reading while listening. Really good idea. Do you think it's better to read out loud or silently in our head? Both are good. So if you start learning a new language and it's a difficult language and you have no idea how pronunciation works, I recommend you read while listening first. Read the sentences while listening over and over again until you know how pronunciation works. And then you keep doing it, but this time you start saying it aloud. If you try to say it aloud from the very beginning, it's going to be very difficult, but also you will not pay attention to the right pronunciation maybe, and you might end up developing, like your pronunciation might end up not being all that good. It's better to just listen while reading at first. If the language is very difficult, if it's Spanish or if it's Portuguese or French, you can start shadowing from day one. But if it's something much more difficult, maybe you shouldn't. Again, I do both, and even for difficult languages, I shadow from day one. So depends on a lot of things, right? Depends on your personality, depends on your goals and how fast you want to start speaking. But both are good for different purposes and different energy levels as well. If you feel really tired, then you don't do shadowing, you just read while listening. Still nice reps you get in. You learning more sentences by doing that. But if you want to learn more actively, then you do shadowing. It depends on a lot of things, but both are useful. Next question. Hi, Michael. In theory, sounds clear and simple, but you have to be more clear on the details. You speak about 10,000 words. Word families, that is around 70,000, 80,000 words. where can we find these so many families for any language? You go to Paul Nation's BNC COCA list and you download that, and you can use those, and you just simply translate them. It doesn't translate 100% exactly for every language, but it's good enough. And I've got a list of example sentences of all those word families that I took from Paul Nation's list. Are you referring to Nation's list? We translate in the target language? Yeah, exactly. How? You put them on a spreadsheet and you put it. There goes my pen. You take the translation code, put the words, the two letters there for whatever language, like DE for German, ES for Spanish, PT for Portuguese, etc. And then you translate it all on a spreadsheet into the target language. And then you create audio files, you start listening and repeating, all of that. Yeah. Again, 10,000 word families is a lot. It's a massive amount of vocab. You probably don't need all that much. If you learn the first 2, 3, maybe 5,000 word families, if you're really motivated, more than enough to understand pretty much anything in the language. And you can then switch to actually interesting content, native speaker content, right? Next. Keep up the great work, man. I left Australia 6 months ago with my partner and moved to Colombia. Until I found your videos a few weeks back, zero Spanish. My partner is Colombian, I was lazy. Now, 3 weeks later, I'm able to comprehend 10 times more. I'm working on my 2,000 words as we speak. Doing this is a game changer. If you focus on learning a lot of words, it's going to improve your comprehension. You focus on learning the verbs and the most common adjectives and the most common nouns with example sentences, mnemonics, example sentences, and you read and listen to them over and over, your comprehension will skyrocket. It will improve very fast. If instead you do the random stuff they normally recommend, like watch YouTube videos in the language, blah, 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 you will improve, but it's going to be painfully slow. And for speaking, again, if you write down your language islands, everything you want to be able to say, all the conversation topics, all the situations, interactions you normally have, write everything you want to be able to say, translate it, start reading and listening to it, repeat it aloud over and over and over again, and you learn a couple of thousand sentences, your own sentences translated, your ability to speak will improve massively in a matter of weeks if you do this. But instead, if you go to classes or you use apps or you try to learn by watching YouTube videos, it's going to be extremely slow. But yeah, glad to hear that it's working for you. Next question. Associations do help, but I still find remembering the words very difficult. I sometimes create an association, then I forget it by the next morning. For me, unless I'm doing something wrong, constant review is necessary to simply remember words. Often I need to review several times a day, or I've forgotten the words. Yeah, maybe you need to get better at creating associations as well. It's a skill, and the more you do it, and the more you try to improve at it, the better you get, and the faster you'll create associations, and the more effective they'll be. But also, you need reviewing. I never said that mnemonics alone will make you create a mnemonic for a word and you know it forever. No, it's not always like this. They really help remember better, but you need reviewing. But that's really easy. You take the example sentences for the words and you listen to them. And you can review 1,000 words in an hour, 1,000 example sentences of 1,000 words in an hour. Just listen to it. Put it in the background while you do something else. In the car, while you're driving, you're going to work, you are working out, going for a run, whatever. You just listen to it over and over and over again, and you reviewing everything. And this way you'll you'll remember them. You can review them every day for the rest of the month and you learn thousands of words quickly. It's as simple as that, right? Mnemonics plus lots of reviewing, but effective reviewing. If you do Anki, it's not terrible if you do it, but it's very slow and time consuming. But if instead you create audio files and you listen to those sentences while you do something else in the background, you can get like 20, 30 reviews of those sentences in a week. If you just listen to that, you can review it many times, like dozens of times per week. And there's no way you'll forget those words. Next one. I'm learning French. I have B1 now and hopefully soon B2. Reading and understanding sentences goes very well, but what I find difficult is to make sentences myself. I have to think pretty hard all the time in real conversation. What can I do to make it more fluently? 2 things, maybe 3 things. Language islands, shadowing, and active recall. Language islands. You write down everything you want to say in all the conversations you usually have. All the topics, all the situations. Make a list. Write everything you want to say in those conversations, in those specific interactions. You translate it, create audio files, and you start reviewing it. Read and listen to those sentences over and over again. Your own sentences translated. And once you've learned those, you'll be able to say way more. At least in the conversations you normally have. Then you take those sentences and you start shadowing. You listen to them and you say them aloud over and over at home. It's a drill. You practice saying them aloud every single day, as many times as possible, until you can say them well. And finally, active recall, translation. You take those sentences that you wrote, you look at them in your language, you try to say them in French, and then you check if you say them correctly or not. You mentally or verbally, speaking aloud, translate into French and then check. So you're getting corrected as well. You're getting the right answer when you make mistakes. And you're training yourself to think in the language and to speak aloud. And you do these 3 things: language islands, shadowing, active recall, translation, and you will get much better at speaking very quickly. It's as simple as that. Next, what accountability system do you use to ensure you're learning 30 new words a day? Do you use electronic or physical word bank? How can you know you're learning 30 new words a day? Well, I've got vocabulary lists from spreadsheets. So I create mnemonic associations for memorizing words. So I do 30 and then the next day I do more than 30, but you get the idea. You do 30 and then the next day you do another 30 and you know where you left, so you continue doing 30 more associations per day. And how do you ensure you don't forget them? Well, you get the example sentences and you read and listen to the list of example sentences, and then you listen to it throughout the day over and over again, and you will not forget them. You might forget some of them, but if you keep listening to the audio file, they are still there. So maybe in the first day or 2 you've forgotten them, but then you'll hear them so many times that you'll remember them anyway. In a month's time, it's impossible that you don't remember all the words from the list. Like if you've got 1,000 words there with 1,000 example sentences, and that's an hour of audio, more or less. Usually less than an hour of audio. Depends on the language, but usually like 45, 50 minutes. You listen to that over and over again every day after creating the 30 associations. And in 30 days, there's no way. Like after 30, 40, 50, 60 hours of listening to that, there's no way you don't remember every single word, every single sentence in that 1 hour of example sentence list. So it's create mnemonics for 13 new words from the list, and then just listen to it over and over again, and just read the list once in a while and check. If you don't remember some words, just check what it meant. But that's it. But just repetitive listening to the list is extremely effective. You take the list and you listen to it as many times as necessary. All right, next. Someone once said that in the US, movies, TV shows, and computer games are made at the level of a 10-year-old. The content on Duolingo is exactly that. Buying the app is beyond stupid. Yeah, it's made for teenagers, children, and adults with very low. How can I put this in a way that's monetization friendly? Adults with dopamine addicted adults with very low attention spans. Let's leave it at that. It's designed for people who are not all that intelligent. So it's I put it in the same category as TikTok videos, Candy Crush type of games for cell phones, that kind of stuff. Duolingo is that. So is that a good use of your time? I mean, not my time, and most people who watch this channel know it's people who value their time and they've got projects and they've got things to do. So no, it's a massive waste of time. Don't use it. I have a question about shadowing. How can I get through the thousands of sentences in good time? Right now, I've got about 2,200 combined sentences to start with. The audio I have for this is about 2 hours. It would be 5 times more if I made the shadowing audios of the same stuff. So how can I do this? Thank you. 2,200 sentences, 5 times each. That's 11,000 sentences. For shadowing the audio files, you can normally do around 1,500, sometimes more sentences per hour. So yeah, it's less than 10 hours to shadow the whole thing, like each sentence 5 times. And it doesn't mean that you remember each one of those 2,200 sentences perfectly after shadowing it one time. But if you shadow it one more time, like 5 more reps with everything, so 20 something hours in total, or like, no, not 20 something. Yeah, it'd be like less than 20 hours, 15 hours maybe. You'll remember them pretty well and you'll be able to say them pretty well. And if you also listen to those sentences on repeat during the day as well, that's extra reviewing you're getting. Let me do the math again. 2,200 sentences, that's 11,000 reps to shadow the whole list 5 times. That's like 7 hours. So if you do it twice, 5 reps with each sentence from start to finish twice, that's less than 15 hours and for a total of 22,000 reps. It's very doable in a week or two if you work hard. And then with lots of extra listening, you remember the sentence as well. Shadowing is just if you've got language islands and you want to get good at speaking fast, even if you don't do anything else, if you work really hard and you shadow those sentences on repeat for hours and hours and hours, you'll get decent at speaking really quickly. Like 20 or 30 hours of shadowing on repeats with your own sentences, and you'll get decent at speaking. It's very hard work, but anyone can do it. Even you don't need to be a genius for that. Just put in the hours. Go against it. Okay, Ali says, this man shares the unpleasant facts. He's right about learning languages. Perhaps his ways are not interesting. Often they're not, but they are the right ways. Yeah, exactly. You want easy and fun, or you want results. And the people who get results, people who are successful at things, they don't get there by chasing what's easy and fun, or what's the lazy way and all of that. No one no one who's like top 10% at anything. No one got there like just having fun. Like you have to enjoy what you do to a certain degree, but to get really good at something, you need to work hard, and there's no way around it. And what you get on YouTube these days is people telling you, "Oh, just watching TV, bro. You learn blah 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 language." No, you learn some words or some things. They're doing that, but if you want results, you have to work hard. There's no way around it. And language learning YouTube has this thing of glorifying laziness. You don't see this in any other field, I think, but it's for some reason it just because I don't know why. I don't know. It's a comprehensible input thing. People just got into that, and people like to be lied to because, like, as long as if you really want to believe something that you can get results. Like people rather believe lies that they know the lies, but it's something that sounds good. You rather believe that than hearing the uncomfortable truth, which is that you need to do hard work to get results. But that's why we are where we are with language learning, with most people not getting results. Okay, next question. At what point do you recommend stopping using the methods that you are describing and just consume native media and speak in the second language? Once you can understand everything and say everything you want? Surely not. At some point, there must be diminishing returns on all this effort. What is the point to stop? It really depends on the person and your goals. So, yes, you should switch to authentic content as soon as possible. You should start listening to interesting podcasts, watching shows, whatever, as soon as possible. Listening is better because it's more time efficient. But talk to people from day one if you can. And listen to native speaker podcasts, interesting podcasts from day one. Not day one, but early on. When should you switch? Really depends. How well do you understand the learning materials? When you listen to the example sentences of the 2000 most common verbs, for example, can you effortlessly understand it? If you can, then start listening to native speaker content. And then for speaking, you should always continue working on your speaking. If you want to keep getting better, you should work on your speaking in one form or another. Like, different ways, but you should do something to work on your speaking on your own. Listening and repeating, shadowing, translation exercises. I still, and less than I should, but I still work on my English once in a while. And I've got a C2 certificates for English, and I still do some listening and repeating, and I should do more to work on my pronunciation. So if you can have conversations with people, like again, depends on the person. If you just want to be conversational, once you are conversational, you can stop doing anything else and just keep learning by talking to people. But if you want to reach a level where you are really good, you should continue shadowing and preparing more language islands and doing active recall to improve your mistakes, because you don't get all of that. Like, you get some things from talking to people, but you don't get, for the most part, you don't get feedback, for example. So once you speak well enough that they understand you, you make yourself understood, there's usually, most native speakers, they stop correcting you. So yeah, obviously the more you speak to people, the better. The more content you listen to, native speaker content, the better once you understand it. But I highly recommend you continue learning vocab and you continue doing speaking exercises on your own until you are at a really, really high level. That's the honest advice. Next question. Would love a video about your thoughts on using monolingual dictionaries as part of your learning routine. Single language only. So instead of, say, Spanish-English, just using a Spanish dictionary. Spanish dictionary for Spanish speakers. 100% Spanish. I think translation is much more efficient, to be honest, because if you don't know that much vocab in a language, and even when you're at a decent level, if you're looking up words and then the definition of those words, like you don't know a word, you look it up, and the definition also, you don't really understand the definition all that well. First of all, it's going to be slower to understand the definition if you don't know it all that well. And also, maybe you don't understand it all that well. So you're not getting the right answer. Translation, a lot of people speak against translation. I think translation is very efficient as a language learning method. There are lots of different ways of doing translation, of using translation for language learning. Simplest one being bilingual text, so you get English on one side or your native language on one side and the target language on the other side, and you look up everything. The moment you don't know, you just look it up. I use this all the time. Most of my learning is through translation. Most of my materials just use translation, right? That's how most, in fact, historically, that's how most linguists learned until recently. Historical polyglots from the 1800s or from Roman times or whatever, Renaissance, they learned by translation for the most part, or by reading stuff that they had already learned. Reading books like the Bible that they had already read in their language, and then you read it in the other language. But they mostly use translation. Translation is extremely efficient. So monolingual dictionaries, nothing wrong with it, but I wouldn't use it. What if I listen to that language, like for instance, watching a movie in that language, but I'm not able to understand what they're saying because they speak so fast? I'm learning French, but I find myself playing the movies every 2 or 3 minutes to try and understand what they are saying. Okay, if I understand correctly, what if they speak too fast and you don't understand what they're saying, so you have to constantly pause it to understand what they're saying? If you don't understand what you're watching, either you've got a vocab problem, so you have to look up words, and if you've got a vocab problem, you need to first focus on learning more words, or you know the words, but you have a comprehension problem. You don't, even if you know the words, you read the words and you know what they mean, but then when you hear them in a complete sentence, in a fast sentence by native speakers, you don't understand the words. You can't distinguish them. If that's the problem, you need to do more listening practice. And for that, what I recommend for this is mostly taking the example sentences and listening to them on repeat, and once you understand them easily, listen to them at 1.25 and then 1.5 speed. And if you understand that easily as well, then start listening to podcasts in the language and listen to both the really fast speech example sentences on repeat and the podcast, and go back and forth, and it'll get easier and easier to understand. Also, you can and you should do a lot of shadowing, because shadowing will help you understand better. But maybe you've got a vocab problem. If you need to look up words, it's a vocab problem, and then you should focus on learning more vocab before you try to watch films, because it's not enjoyable to have to pause the film every couple of minutes to look up words. You can do it, but for me personally, it's not enjoyable, and most people don't find it enjoyable. So try to learn more words first, and try doing shadowing, and try listening to the example sentences at not double speed, but 1.25, 1.5 speed. So it's fast, and you get used to fast speech. And once you understand that, native speakers will be easier to understand. But even then, just listen to a lot of podcasts as well, so that then films are more comprehensible. And I think yeah, there are more questions, but I think that's it for today because this is quite exhausting. It's been an hour and a half or something. I'll try to answer more questions soon. I'll make another Q&A. I get so many questions, so many comments everywhere. I hope this was useful. Again, if I didn't answer your question, I didn't have the time for it, but I'm just, my throat is killing me and I need, plus I think the weather is good, so I'm gonna go to the beach now. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you've got more questions, and I'll make another one of these videos soon with more answers to your questions. All right. Anyway, thanks for watching and see you later.